The Suzuki GSXR, or GSXR, not to be confused with the actually named GSXR from Suzuki, is a bike that receives some pretty undue criticism for being one of the go-to squid bikes, but in reality, it's a top contender from the Japanese Big Four that's teeming with heritage. To understand how we ended up at a bike with over 200 horsepower and chock full of electronics, we need to go way back to the inception of the GSXR line, so let's jump in. Suzuki, much like other gigantic Japanese conglomerates, specializes in a pretty wide variety of products. They make everything from outboard marine engines to cars, although none of those things can crack a sick wheelie, so I don't really care. Just like the other Big Four manufacturers, Suzuki got into the motorcycle game in the 50s after World War II in order to manufacture motorized bicycles so people could get around for cheap. But one defining feature from Suzuki was their commitment to motorsports and racing, starting with motocross and then into road racing. Fun fact, Suzuki has recorded a total of 93 victories at the Isle of Man TT races, and they've also taken the runner-up spot at various race categories 100 times and a total of 92 third places, so this company was and still is committed to motorsport. Suzuki also has a unique feature in that from 1955 to 1976 they manufactured only two-stroke bikes, and this was in a time when four-strokes were becoming more and more popular. Some famous Suzuki two-strokes include the GT750, which sounded like this. In many ways, the Suzuki Katana can kind of be thought as the grandfather of the GSXR. Many of the features that are on the Katana would come to define the future GSXR, like the inline 4 and much of the technology. However, in 1984, Suzuki launched a bike that would upend the entire motorcycle world, the first in line of the GSXR, the GSXR 750. Looking at this bike now, it just kind of looks like an old school super sport, but in 1984, this thing must have looked like a spaceship. You have to realize, in 1984, Japanese bikes were still following the UJM trend. They looked like this for the most part. They were heavy and didn't really have too much in the way of proper race bike technology. They were designed to appeal to a broad audience and were meant to be a Swiss Army knife of motorcycles, i.e. you can take it off-road, to the track, to the grocery store, and it would do okay at all of these things. The 1984 GSXR 750 was track-focused, and this was a first for the industry, a bike that would offer little concessions for the street and would appeal to those looking to race. With over 100 horsepower, less than 180 kilograms of dry weight, 18-inch wheels, and a lightweight frame, the GSXR 750 was a revolution. One of the quirks of the GSXR 750 was that it actually was air and oil cooled, which in today's modern sport bike world would seem a bit antiquated. And here's how it sounded. The GSXR 750 received raving reviews, despite the twitchy handling when it first came out. It was a bike that really turned things up a notch in the motorcycling world and turned the competition on its head. Easily the most innovative feature on the bike was the frame, which was a first for manufacturers. It used a welded square section aluminum tubing instead of the traditional steel frame. This made it super lightweight, and combined with, for the first time, incredibly aggressive ergonomics, the bike set the standard for what a super sport should be. Many magazines said that the competition made bikes that were ridden on the road and could be driven on the track, but Suzuki made a bike that was ridden on the track and could be ridden on the road. However, despite all the innovation and great strides that Suzuki made, the bike still lost to Honda and their VFR Interceptor at the AMA Superbike series, so Suzuki had to keep innovating. They went back to the drawing board and in 1988 launched the second generation GSXR, which was an iteration of the first rather than a revolution. However, every detail of the chassis and engine of the GSXR down to the single bolt was reevaluated for 1988. They streamlined the body some more, added new slingshot carbs to the bike, and they made sure the world knew about it by slapping that onto the side of the bike as a decal, and replaced the dual headlights with a more aerodynamic pair. However, despite being up in power, this generation went up in weight too. In 1992, the GSXR finally received the water cooling it deserved, because the air/oil cooling system just couldn't keep up with the power the engine was outputting by now. Weight remained largely the same, which by today's standards made the bike into a bit of a pig, but then in 1994, they did another major overhaul and got that weight down. In 92, we also got a new model, the GSXR 600, the perennial squid bike, the GSXR bra of yore, the all-seeking, all-knowing squid missile. It's interesting to me that the GSXR 600 gets this rap because, truth be told, it's just an honest 600 class bike. But hey, years of Monster energy drinks and vaping can just tarnish a motorcycle. So now we have the GSXR 600 and the GSXR 750 being produced and sold side by side. Like the ZX6R, R6, and CBR 600, the GSXR 600 was a derivative of its big brother motorcycle with virtually no changes despite a smaller capacity engine. An important thing to note here is that Suzuki is one of the few manufacturers who actually kept producing a true middleweight by way of the 750 well into the 2000s and all the way up until the modern day. All other Japanese manufacturers have stopped selling a true middleweight supersport. Bikes like the ZX7 were relegated to the dustbin of history. But Suzuki still sells a 750, which many magazines and reviewers have lauded as a perfect blend of power, handling, and flickability. And getting back to our history, in 1996 we start to see a familiar GSXR shape coming into the fold. The now classic double scoop at the front and familiar lines begin to appear. The wheelbase was reduced, making the bike more aggressive and flickable, like the original GSXR 750 that was launched over a decade ago at this point. Still carbureted, the GSXR was mean for the time and is still mean to this day. Moving into the 2000s, we get another revised GSXR and continuing the streamlining, increasing power, and reduced weight as the competition. However, in 2001, we're introduced to the GSXR 1000, a bike that would become infamous for pulling ridiculously hard compared to the competition. Legends have always had it that the 1000cc inline 4 in the GSXR just pulled a little bit harder than the other 1000s at the time, and that myth remains true today. Peruse any of the test videos of the brand new GSXR 1000 and all the reviewers say that, yep, it pulls like a goddamn mule on steroids. As most people know, the early to mid 2000s were a glory period for motorcycles. The 600 class was booming, sales were hot, and innovation was high. I blame easy credit, the flush housing market, and the title patterns that led to a much higher index of squids, but I digress. We'll save my own meteorological musings for another time. However, by the late 2000s, sales had slowed, and the GSXR remained largely untouched and unchanged for many years, until very recently when Suzuki launched their brand new GSXR to compete with the latest crop of superbikes, which, in my opinion, we're in another golden age of motorcycles, at least when it comes to how many people are getting introduced into riding and how many superbikes there are on sale that are highly updated. The Suzuki GSXR holds its own as a legendary motorcycle teeming with tech, despite receiving an unfair rap as the squid's bike of choice. They make an awesome track weapon, parts are plentiful, and if you go for broke on the 1000, you better hold on for dear life because that bastard's gonna rip your arms off. Thanks for watching this video, guys. What do you think about the Suzuki GSXR? Is it a squid's bike? Is it a bike that you'd own? If you liked the video, remember to smash that like button into the ground and share it. Thanks again. Like the ZX6R, R6, and 600... Oh my fucking god. I.e. you can... God fuck! Fuck you every time, dude. Are you going anywhere? Are you gonna open it again? Fuck. Every time. Frame, which was a first for, in a time when So now we've had the GSXR 600. So now we have the GSXR. Personally, I blame easy credit, the flush housing market, and a title pattern that, Jesus Christ. It's interesting to me that the GSXR 600, wow.